from just outside the Empire City at the crossroads to the northeast. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are and whenever you are, this is your premier podcast for all things unknown, not media, and I'm your host, JP. Welcome to Not Media. I'm your host, JP. Today, I have a very special guest. Steve Bassett has spoken to audiences in 20 countries about the political implications of the UAP ET phenomena and disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He is the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and executive director of Paradigm Research Group, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit seeking an end to a government and post-truth embargo. His advocacy work has been well covered by national and international media, including CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Washington Post, and the New York Times, as well as represented in numerous documentary films. His lectures and interviews are well represented on YouTube. In 2013, PRG organized and conducted a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington. In November of 2014, PRG launched a 2-year political initiative out of Washington, D.C. that injected the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. In December 2023, Steve co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance in Los Angeles, a new media-centric organization aiming to align those working with the UAP ET research arena with writers, directors, producers working across every facet of the global entertainment industry. PRG is presently working to help bring about whatever more comprehensive congressional hearings in the U.S. House and Senate for a growing list of disclosure witnesses. His main website is paradigmresearchgroup.org. He also has the HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. And also there's stateoftheworld.forum. And Steve, great to have you back on. I know you were one of my first interviews when I kicked this podcast off about 2 years ago, and a lot has happened in 2 years. You know, a whole lot has happened. We've had the congressional hearings on UAPs. You know, every month we get closer and closer to the truth embargo coming to an end, and I know that's one of your primary goals of the Paradigm Research Group. How have you been?
Hanging in. This issue is very hot now. There's just so much happening. But at the same time, there's so much happening in other areas. So that the combination of the two is pretty stressful.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to make progress, and you're trying to do what you want to do, but there's things happening all the time that literally make it more difficult. In other words, we're going into a headwind right now, but we're still making a little progress each week.
Yes, I know on top of everything going on with UAP disclosure, there's a lot of political turmoil within this country. There's a lot of turmoil across the world. And, you know, just kind of looking back in history, it always seems to kind of be that way where, you know, like if we take, for example, the 2001 disclosure hearing where Stephen Greer, it had all the government and a military witness. I believe that was the Disclosure Project. It seemed like that. I think that popped off right before 9/11. And it was like we were right at the point where the National Press Club was involved and it was getting world press. And then right after, this major bombshell drops with this disclosure group, a press conference. I think that was in like May or April of 2001.
So it was 5 months before September 9/11, and that was it. I mean, the work was completely set back, and I'm sure that Stephen Greer tried to move forward, but we entered a whole nother space, and it was only 2 years, a little over, about 2.5 years, 3 years. We go into Iraq in that war, and everything has changed. So that is an example of how would you say history impeding on this issue. What's going on now, though, is at another level altogether. That was an event, and it led to an international situation and a war. What's going on now is far more complicated. We have plenty of conflicts overseas. We do have major issues being overseas that are being addressed and could blow up at any time. So we've got that. So that matches 2001. But in addition to that, we have the most intensely partisan time in our country, political partisan time between the two basic parties in my lifetime. And I've seen some of that, right? Obviously, they've been going at it for a long time. But the degree of partisan animus, anger, is unprecedented. And so we have that. But on the other hand, we have this issue, which is once you understand it, you realize how incredibly profound it is, how important it is. And it is clearly the most nonpartisan issue you can imagine. It's just very difficult to make this a partisan issue. I mean, the closest we came was during the initial run on the UAP Disclosure Act when it was submitted. It got a lot of pushback, and some of that was coming from defense contractors who just did not want that bill to be that strong. They would have liked it to not been passed at all. So they used their lobbyists and others other people pressured to cut it in half, get rid of the powers, and certainly get rid of eminent domain. So the defense contractors would be kind of, you would think, more to the right than to the left, though I assure you they lobby both parties, and both parties have supported what they've done. That's about as close as we've come. And more importantly, more than a few of the people that are really engaging this politically have gone out of their way to say publicly, this is a nonpartisan issue, and we're dealing with it in a nonpartisan way. And I watched that happen. They do not get on the other people of the other party who are engaging this issue. They do not give them any grief about their position on this issue or what they're doing. Now, on another issue, they may have statements to make, but it's almost like this is a safe space that they can get into and actually work across the aisle on something of great importance, which probably makes them feel pretty good. I think it gives them that opportunity to do real governance without this amazing animus that's turning the country into two separate camps.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I know in the age of disclosure, they played back. It's funny enough. I actually, when I got my criminal justice degree, I actually did that Reagan speech. It was I took an elective during my criminal justice degree, and I had to duplicate that speech from Reagan. And it talks about how, you know, like the summation of the speech is this famous. I think it was 87 or 88. He talks about how worlds and the leaders of nations would come together if we face some sort of a external threat. And we're kind of seeing that with what you just talked about. There's so much turmoil in this country right now, and I've never seen it. You know, we're still working in law enforcement. I see how divided this country is, and it's scary. It really is at some level that people are so divided. And not even to get too much into politics, you have this issue now that draws us all together. You have, a Democratic Mike Rounds. He's a
Republican.
A Republican, and then you have Chuck Schumer, who's a Democrat. Those were the two main politicians who had originally brought this act together. And then I heard there were some constituents, or actually senators, that had constituents in their jurisdiction, and there was, like you said, issues of funding and. I don't know exactly what it comes down to, if it's tax money or if they're helping these individuals stay elected. But the concern came up that when one of the clauses of the UAP 2023 Disclosure Act was that the key line was something about biologics and recovered exotic materials or something to that effect.
Yeah, sure.
And that was a bridge too far for the defense contractors. And if we saw the age of disclosure, we know that in the legacy program that the defense contractors are a major part of this research with this unidentified aerial phenomenon. And reason being is because they're able to just get more protection and no government oversight into private corporations. So you have the Freedom of Information Act, and when that's applicable to government entities, you know, as long as it's not a violation of national security, you are allowed to get information. But when it comes to private entities, privately owned corporations, they don't have to deal with the same set of rules that governments have to deal with. So there's a strong, probably a strong link between why that, they're able to put funding into that and have less oversight into these private corporations doing work like Lockheed Martin. What are some of the other ones that come up? Boeing and Grumman. These are private defense contractors that do not fall under the same lines of government insight as the government does through freedom of information.
What you're trying to say is well, yeah, the Freedom of Information Act cannot be used on private corporations like the contractors in order to get information. And that's one of the reasons why they got the lion's share proportion of the research on these vehicles. And that is an issue, and it's been raised, and it's now publicly known. So that's going to be addressed. As far as their objection to the bill, it wasn't about the terms biologics or craft of non-human origin. That's out the door. I mean, that cow's left the barn a long time ago. It was about the fact that they do not want to have to deal with the situation that has been extant for so long, namely that they have been doing this research on behalf of the government in regarding ET issue. They have said nothing about it. All right. The eminent domain clause probably was the thing that most spurred them to take aggressive action, which was risky because it was it was transparent. We literally watched it happen in real time. So in a sense, they outed themselves. And the upshot is that, and here's how it went down. This is kind of amusing. Grush goes in front of the committee, the subcommittee of the oversight in the House, and says we have biologics and we have non-human craft, right? Non-human tech and craft. Schumer comes out and then puts forward the bill with rounds, the UAP Disclosure Act, the full thing, in which he wanted and did include the eminent domain. Over what? Over the technology that they were working on, which confirms Grush. In other words, if there's no non-human tech, non-human bodies, why do we have to have eminent domain over that, which is what the bill implied? And then the contractors, not happy about that, right? I've certainly talked to their lobbyists, who then went up on the Hill and talked to certain key members. We know who they were, top, powerful people who had the ability to call up some of the people that were working on the reconciliation of the two bills. I mean, they're not in a vault somewhere, and let them know we got to change this. All right.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, the defense contractors confirm that there is this non-human tech and non-human biologics, because why would they care about eminent domain over something they don't have? And so in just those three things, you see, in a sense, they're doing what they can to hold it off, but the things that are actually happening are reinforcing in the public's mind the truth, the fundamental truth.
Yeah.
And so the bill was resubmitted 3 more times with pretty much everything, including eminent domain. And it was somehow it didn't make it into the mix, because the next 3 times around, they were prepared. And so, in a sense, they were able to hold it off. It's going to be resubmitted again next year.
Yeah.
And so, Schumer, Rounds, Gillibrand, they have all made it pretty much clear that this is the bill they want. And there are people in the House that go along with that. Burleson supports that bill. He may be submitting a bill soon in the House again. And in this case, you're seeing a slight modification, which is what you expect.
Okay.
My understanding is this bill will change the presidential UFO review board, which is a key part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the board, high-level people appointed in an appropriate way that decide what comes out right now, what waits a little longer, and so forth, to a congressional appointed review board, which makes it a little more bipartisan. And that's fine. Either one is fine with me. And so the bill is still in place. Things are still happening. And of course, we'll talk about that. So the managers of the truth embargo And those that feel they benefit from the maintaining that embargo, who are not necessarily managing it, the defense contractors certainly have some control, are losing. And they've been losing for some time. The question is, when do they surrender?
So,
and that could be soon.
Just real quick before we don't get too far away from those points you just made. So, what do you propose then is the objective if the eminent domain wasn't removed over 2 and 3? If it was submitted 3 times, first time it was not accepted, and the second 2 times also no, because
second 2 times the whole bill did not get to be voted on. The whole bill was blocked. Okay, but it was included in that bill. It's mostly to make a statement, I think, that we're serious about this.
So effectively, even if it did get voted on, we almost know that it probably would have got voted down because that clause wasn't taken out, and that was a big bone of contention for members in the Department of Defense or the contractors.
Well, no, everything's negotiable.
Okay.
So the fact is that if it gets put in again, and those representing the defense contractors want that out, then they can negotiate.
Okay.
And they've begun negotiating through members of the House, the ones that are connected to them pretty tightly and have their interest at heart. And they might agree to pass the bill if the eminent domain is removed, in which case, no problem. I do not have a problem with the eminent domain clause of that bill being taken out. I assure you the rest of the bill is way more important than the proprietary aspects of this post-disclosure, which can be addressed. They can keep it out of the bill, and we could then go have disclosure, which we could have even before the bill is passed, how close we are.
Yeah.
And then the Congress will decide, at that point, do we
are you okay with that?
Domain? Yeah.
And are you okay with that because of national security matters?
Either way it goes. I think first of all, it's not as bad as they think, but they're erring on the side of caution. Plus, they just don't want to have to face up. They don't want to have to face up to the millions of questions that are going to come down on them and their corporate heads and what have you about, well, why did you go along with this and why, blah, blah, blah. Is that eminent domain simply means that the government has the right under the law to acquire, like land, or in this case, the technology regarding their development of ET tech, for the common good. But they have to pay for it. There has to be a compensation. All right. And there's also the case that rather than a straight compensation, which would be very difficult to arrive at a number, what the government may well do is say, all right, we now have control through eminent domain of this tech. Now, we're going to now discuss with you further development of it in joint venture, right? So you will benefit and the public will benefit. Okay. We just don't want you, the only entity deciding, right, and making the money from this tech. And so it's not like they just lose it forever. Unlike an eminent domain of land, I mean, normally the government or state or local or federal will say, we have to buy that land from you. We need it for a public good project. And they buy it and it's gone. This would not necessarily be like that. They're not going to buy the tech. They're going to say, look, we now control it. We're going to decide how it goes forward. And we're going to work with you in terms of how it gets developed, so that you, in fact, will benefit financially, but obviously the public is going to benefit as well. That's really what's behind it. But their attitude is, we don't want it, right? And at this point, they're getting away with that. But I don't think that'll last.
Well, they've been doing it for so long. They figure it's theirs to have, and really nobody else's business to be meddling in their affairs. And I think that's how it goes.
And make that case. I mean, they can come forward publicly and make the case for why they should have continued and unbridled access to that technology. But of course, they can't do that, can they?
Because everywhere else, every other sector we have in this world, and you have, as far as equal rights, there should be equal ability for competition, and there should be it should be open to contract to be who is capable and what, as far as finding a capable party
True.
able to accomplish the task at hand. There should be it should be like an open bidding,
Well, true, but they're in a pretty good position. Plus, it's a number of contractors. I mean, there may be some other contractors like a piece of that action, but let's face it, they've been working on this for decades.
Yeah.
And so likely that, but that doesn't mean that some things could go to other contractors. This is a problem I hope we have very soon. It is a problem I'd love to see play out. But because at that point we're in the post-disclosure world and we're now looking at a whole lot of things. But that is how they engaged the issue during that submission. It's been historically recorded. We'll know more about the details and exactly who did most of the leverage on the reconciliation committee that was putting those bills together. And, but ultimately, as long as we get disclosure and get it soon, that's not that awful a thing.
So, looking back in history with, let's just use another example. When it comes to like any sort of major social movement or revolution in this world, you could just take, like, for example, you say like women's rights or civil rights. They often happen on a spectrum. It's never like, if you look back through time, it's never like, all right, this one day, like the world changed, like it was this way and now it's this way. So it's usually there's a shade of a sliding scale of how these things happen over time as they gradually shift towards whatever the end game of that movement was. Like you said, soon. And I know a lot of high-ranking members. What was it in the age of disclosure? A number of 34 that they had on camera? 34
individuals, pretty well accomplished individuals with careers and what have you, all made a number of statements that essentially support the fact that we have this tech in bodies.
One of which is fourth in line currently to be the president. If, God forbid, we never have to have anything like that happen. But I'm just saying, if, all things, just as far as what the facts are, Marco Rubio is technically fourth in line, and he was basically candidly speaking about this, matter with the contractors, at least, I
mean, let's mention the film now. It's The Age of Disclosure.
Yeah.
The documentary came out on the 21st. It's on Amazon right now to rent or buy. It's being monetized. I don't even recover their money, but it's I think it may still be playing in the three theaters that it premiered in New York, Los Angeles, and Washington.
Yeah.
The Angelica pop-up theaters, which are kind of cool, retro.
Cool.
All of that was to make it eligible for an Oscar nomination. We're not at the point yet where a really fine documentary about this subject could get 1,000 or 2,000 screenings. And it's not because it wouldn't make money. It probably would. But because Hollywood, by and large, has stood back on that. They did not want to bother the government by putting out very high-quality docs on this subject on the massive screen. It would give it all kinds of gravitas. They decided to play it cool, don't bother the government, but make lots of sci-fi movies with aliens and make billions and billions of dollars, which they have. Yep. And yep. I get that. I mean, they're not a political organization obligated. But Dan Farah is the first person from what we'll call upper tier Hollywood film business who has done a documentary, put it together. He's the writer, director, found producers, and then put it out in a way that at least warranted an Oscar, could get an Oscar nomination. In that sense, it's a milestone on several levels. He's made history, and that doc's going to be seen by a lot of people. And because he is connected and someone with a Hollywood background, he can get on Bill Maher with his interview, which will be seen by millions of people. He can get on the Joe Rogan podcast, which will be by tens of millions of people, promoting the film, talking about the issues. Nothing against James Fox, but it would be tough for him to get on Joe Rogan unless he has. Maybe he has. If he's gotten on, I apologize tremendously. But Dan Farah was able to do what many
he's spoken about it. I'm not sure if Rogan had Fox on. I'm not sure about that. I would have to fact check that. But I know.
I hope he did, and if he did, he would have been able to promote his film. But I don't think so. Anyway,
but Joe Rogan has spoken highly. When he had Dan Farah on, he spoke highly of James Fox's documentary. I forget the title. I know it was about the Vargina. What's it called?
Phenomenon.
Yes,
and Farah was involved in that. And so, look, the age of the podcast, the podcast paradigm, it's It's really, we've gotten used to it, but I think most people don't realize how extraordinary, significant it is. It is
Yeah,
a whole nother place in terms of people getting information. And not surprisingly, it didn't take very long. You've got podcasters now that are more powerful than anybody that is giving you the nightly news on the networks.
for
And
sure.
I'll even include the CNNs and MSNBCs, cable. So right now, Joe Rogan is probably the most powerful influencer podcaster.
Yes.
Now there are influencers rather, who have more subscribers than him. Like on TikTok, they may have 50 million, 60 million, but they're not doing interviews of high level people and what have you. They're just extremely clever and they're very popular. Maybe a great singer.
Yeah.
So he's had, well, first of all, he had President Trump on, probably helped him get elected. He's
Yes.
had Anna Paulina Luna on, who talked about the UFO issue a lot. All right. He's had Dan Farah on, talked about it at great length. One show he did on this subject, he's done maybe 10, 12, 15, which is the Bob Lazar interview, which is interesting. Very interesting story with Bob Lazar.
Jeremy Corbell's documentary was actually really good. It
I
was
think Corbell was on with him. That show is now hit, which is about 5 years ago. It's hit 75 million views.
yeah.
And so just that one podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, has introduced key aspects of the truth embargo and the ET issue and reality to millions upon hundreds of millions of people. And so the guys over at the defense contractors and the ones at the Pentagon that are just clinging to this like death, like, oh, we just can't let this out. Everybody will go crazy and I'll have to answer very difficult questions. And I would rather be retired first or maybe even dead. They're losing. And they
Yes.
just, to the extent that they yield up sooner and with a little bit of class, they're going to be treated a lot better. But if they
Okay.
cling to this embargo until like the last dog dies and have to be dragged off the porch, it's going to just make them look more culpable, less
Yes.
patriotic. And that's my message to them, though I'm sure they could care less what I think.
For sure. So, just before we get too far away from the documentary, just a quick side story. I actually met for the phenomena. I met the original researcher, Roger Lear. It was at your event, actually. I think it was at the disclosure hearing on Washington in 2013. During a break, I came to that event for a day or two. And Roger Lear was actually one of the original researchers. He was a
Roger
podiatrist.
Lear, are you?
Dr. Lear. Yeah, he was one of the original researchers back in right a couple years after the Varginha crash happened. He had actually taken a trip down to Brazil. I think it was in like the early 2000s.
Okay, all right.
And he wrote a book called UFO Crash in Brazil, or something to that effect. I remember I bought the book way back then, and just randomly I was grabbing something to eat down in the cafeteria at the disclosure hearing on Washington, and I met Roger Lear and was talking to him. Unfortunately, since he's passed away, but he was a podiatrist well known in the UFO research world for doing removing alien implants. That was one of his big reasons why he came to notoriety.
Correct.
But he was also one of the primary researchers, and I think James Fox probably came across a lot of his work from the early 2000s. And then when James Fox probably found out about all the things that Roger Lear found when he took like a month or two trip down to Brazil to interview the original girls who saw the beings and some of the original witnesses. And then, that probably sparked the interest of a lot of other researchers. I was going to ask you, because you had mentioned that it was a limited release because for whatever reason, the people in Hollywood decided that they didn't want to. It almost kind of sounded like you were saying they didn't want to maybe like rock the boat. Is there an angle that you were coming from? Like what is the reason why the producers in Hollywood wouldn't want to have a bigger release of Age of Disclosure? Like how does that ultimately shoot them in the foot?
Well, again, don't put it in terms of just Age of Disclosure. I mean, that was a decision by Dan Farah. Right?
Okay.
But over the decades, right, as the major studios certainly, but many studios were putting out these sci-fi films with ETs in them. There's been about 600 ETs of every shape, size, color, right? These films are making a fortune. Eventually, they came to dominate the top 10 in all time. Avatars, right? So forth. So and of course, I even include the Avenger movies. They have ETs in them. There's ETs, almost non-humans, in all these
For
films,
sure.
and they've made, I think, maybe $200 billion in revenues, counting everything, right? So they're making these are incredibly popular, making a fortune. Now, they've done documentaries. There have been some documentaries that have gotten big screen distribution. One of the most famous is Fahrenheit 9/11 by Michael Moore.
Yeah.
That got a big screen distribution. It was about a political subject that was germane at the time, around the re-election of George W. Bush, and it's made in today's dollars about $420 million.
Wow.
And so the idea, and again, cost maybe $8 or $9 million. Okay, not counting the advertising. But the idea that you can't make money from docs is, of course, absurd. You can, and when you have the ability to make them exceptionally well with the money and the resources to do it right, you can. They've not done it.
Yeah.
This is the first doc that has gotten what we'll call an appropriate distribution, and appropriate in the sense that it was enough screens over enough days. They showed it for a week or so, may still be showing it, to qualify for an Oscar nomination. All the other docs couldn't do that. They were made by us. They were made by the UAP people, the people that are interested in the issue, who taught themselves how to edit, bought the equipment, went out and did the filming, and obviously could not get theatrical distribution like that. The streaming world made it easier for them to monetize them, and that was good. That was certainly helpful for James, and so that was a step forward. But the Hollywood could have done this decades ago. They could have done dozens of documentaries, and the reason to me is pretty clear. The U.S. government does not want this embargo to end, and if they put up docs like that and give it the gravitas that comes with a giant screen, all right, you're watching some of our favorite people, but on a giant screen in a theater. With the big surround sound and everything, that is giving it importance. And that is going to irritate the government. And the government also, of course, in the form of the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, they provide an enormous amount of support to Hollywood films. There's arrangements made all the time to access this equipment and other stuff, and which the government does. I don't know what the terms are, but a lot of it has to do with their promotional videos for the armed services. And so if they piss off the government, all those planes and boats and trains and everything suddenly aren't available anymore. So they will be asked about this. I am sure they're going to have the ones that are the major producers, the big shots who are still around when we have disclosure, which could happen any day. So everyone around right now will probably have sensible, thoughtful explanations for why they just didn't see this as a documentary subject that people would like. Now, they are making streaming stuff now. We've broken through that barrier a couple of years ago. J.J. Abrams does Encounters, right? 4 docs in a series. Then Steven Spielberg makes, J.J. Abrams makes UFO. Steven Spielberg makes Encounters 4. And then J.J. followed up with another 4, Beyond Something. These are all basically documentary things coming from A-listers in Hollywood.
Okay.
So they've gotten to that point. But a big screen, no, not yet. But that's coming, all right? But the man who did it first will always be Dan Farah. He had the guts. He had he made virtually the movie himself in a sense. But obviously he had the ability to know how to market. He had the ability to make connections and get promotions and get on the various shows. So he's the guy that broke that barrier, and I hope he makes another one. I think he is.
Yeah.
I think he's
so speaking of money, one of the things cited as far as the reason for non-disclosure to not end the truth embargo, and I believe this was cited in the documentary, and I also know of some other instances that were just through my own research where presidents did consider disclosing and ending the truth embargo. But one of the main points of contention from the sitting president would be, and I believe it was cited in the documentary, or it may have been somewhere else, but recently I came across that George Bush Jr. So I believe, is that H.W. Bush?
I think it was W. I think there's some confusion about that. Some people are saying it was H.W. Bush, and some people say it was W. Bush.
Okay.
I got to confirm that, but it doesn't really matter. What was
Trump
mentioned
also.
in that doc was that one of the Bush presidents was actually approached, and they were discussing whether to disclose.
Yes.
Okay, and that is a very significant milestone that is now out there because of this doc, one of several.
So, that's one of the points of contention from the president, the head of the executive branch of the government, to consider what the impact, what their legacy is going to be based on the impact that a decision like that could make on the economy. And then Trump even considered this in 2000, during his term in 2016, whether or not he was going to disclose, and whether it would be feasible or whether it would be prudent financially, looking at the government as a business, him being a lifelong businessman. And what do you think ultimately would be, if you, using your knowledge of your deep knowledge of this topic, what ultimately would be the outcome of, the disclosure capital D coming and ending the truth embargo?
Well, first of all,
on the economy,
let me mention that we don't. I think we know that it was brought up, but to the extent that it was discussed in any detail or the president gave much attention to it, we don't know. The implication from the testimony in the Age of Disclosure doc was that it was a little more seriously considered under Bush. So, and that was further back. The further back you go, the less likely a president's going to act on this. Okay, we have moved everything forward. That includes where the presidents are, with the White House, and all that stuff. So, but let me put it this way: all of the objections that have been raised about why this truth cannot be made known, as far as I'm concerned, have zero bearing anymore. As you go back in time, they have a little bit more significance and so forth. You go right back to the beginning where Truman was facing that decision in 47. There's a lot of things that one could discuss that would tend to say, no, let's wait on this. I get that. But 80 years later, there is no justification at all except venality or greed, right? Meaning we want to just make more money if the contractors, or personal uncomfortability, meaning I don't want to have to talk about this, and I don't want to have to speak about this while I'm still working in the government. I want to be retired or dead. Embarrassment, all these things. But all of them are just moot now. There's so much out there. So many people know, hundreds of millions, maybe even a billion or more, pretty much have a good idea worldwide that this is absolutely real. Polls have been taken that reflect that.
For sure.
The amount of information that's come out, we've got testimony, all this. In other words, it's right now, I think they know they've lost, but they still can't bring themselves to accept defeat. This is not uncommon when you have wars. The end of many wars is all about one of the losing side being able to accept the outcome. Right?
Yeah.
And there's various ways this plays out in all of the wars. One of the most famous examples, of course, was the end of World War II in the Pacific. The Japanese really did not want to surrender. It wasn't in their culture, and so forth. And so, and that was known. And so our government made the decision that we would go ahead and drop those bombs in order to eliminate further delays. That decision is still highly questionable. History, I think, is much more complex on that than most people know. But nevertheless, and we did that, and that was a major historical event, I assure you, that may have had a major implication for the presence of ETs, which manifest afterwards. So this is another surrender that they literally have to sort of surrender. You win, well, we're gonna cooperate to get all this stuff out. The people need to know this, and so forth. And it's been interesting, but it's not a war. It's not quite like that, but it is the truth versus the lie. The people backing this massive truth, and the people holding on to the lie. And history will probably, it's going to take a lot of historical analysis to really explain the process, because so much of it is hidden. I mean, we're dealing with something the government still says doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so, and so much is kept behind the classification screens. So it'll be a while before, but one day I think we'll get the full details, certainly the last 20 or 30 years, of what was happening in the government, how they were dealing with the public action, and so forth, to try to keep things going, and then how finally they were wore down to the point where let's just let this go, let's let the bill be passed, and let's begin the process of bringing out the information backing up the truth that we have been lying about. The core truth is very simple. There's either ETs here or they're not.
Yeah.
And they say there's nothing here, right, from anywhere, let alone another star system. And that is the big lie. Once you end that lie, everything follows behind it. Everything we've been doing for the last 7 years is to create a responsible, appropriate structure so that it could be done in a way that was minimally disruptive, more positive, very positive, less negative, which is okay. I would have rather it didn't take 8 years, but most of that structure is built now. There's a platform ready for the president to step out tomorrow, if he so chooses, and simply end the truth embargo. It would take him less than a minute, right? And it's done. The only thing missing, as far as I'm concerned, in this platform is the other half of the UAP Disclosure Act, which could easily be passed in the week following disclosure, right?
Okay.
And so, and because the issue now we know is definitely being kicked around in the White House, it's being openly discussed deliberately by key members of the administration and so forth, backed up by his son, believe it or not, who's very much interested in it. And so, frankly, and given who the president is and the way that he conducts himself, I think that there's no real reason, as far as I can tell, why he couldn't disclose tomorrow and get nothing but benefit from it.
All right? And you believe that, as far as this legacy program goes, we have this per the documentary, we have this legacy program. And then even before the documentary, I mean, I've probably been doing this research for about 20 years. I mean, I've known about the crash retrieval programs. I've known about the whole process of how they're feeding this through the Department of Defense to private contractors, and then there's some sort of a deal struck as far as who gets priority rights. As far as what the technology is developed into, military gets first picks, and then some of it's seeded down to the private industry. How powerful, if we look back even to Eisenhower's speech where he warned to beware of the military-industrial complex. And then soon after that, if we see, also just as far as the Department of Defense goes, then you have the Kennedy assassination. It's just kind of laying the groundwork to show you how powerful, without getting into why or what, we can just see that, there was a big push for this war against communism, and Kennedy was trying to keep peace with that. Probably one of the main bones of contention with one of the reasons why he was assassinated. But moving forward, it kind of gives you this feeling of like, are we really a sovereign nation, or is there this facade of a sovereign nation, and then that ultimately the military is making a lot of the decisions, which then moving into the next decade or two, when a president like Carter comes in and says, the first thing I'm going to do when I get into office is I'm going to overturn this whole, look into the whole UFO thing. And then we have presidents moving forward, also as far as Clinton goes, who stated he looked into it and was basically told nothing to see here. Does the president, if they want to go against this program that has now been defined as the legacy program, where you have the CIA acting effectively as a quarterback, coordinating this whole thing for recovery of these UAPs, giving it to defense contractors for reverse engineering. The Department of Energy is also involved, dealing with anything outside that can be dealt with through congressional acts. So using what was it, subclauses of the of some type of nuclear act. There's verbiage in that they could kind of pick and put in place why we shouldn't have access to this information dealing with UAPs due to the aspects of energy, whatever energy or propulsion systems, radiation. So, is this legacy program so powerful? Is it really, really that simple? Do you believe that the platform has been built, even looking back in decades about how staunchly this has been fought against and how much power the military actually has? Can the president actually just supersede that without approval first through this program? Is it actually possible?
Okay. Well, first of all, the legacy program is simply the program du jour. There have been many, many programs operating from different platforms on this issue. They brought up the fact that CIA was handling one area. That the idea there's one overriding program, no. Plus, we're talking 80 years here. And so the management of the UAP, UFO issue, ET issue, has been handled for 80 years by a number of programs that have changed and modified. Some have probably gone out of business. Others have rose up. We won't have the details on that for a while, but the tendency is to try to just find a particular thing and then focus on that. How powerful it was? Probably not as powerful as you think, but whatever the programs were and however they were handled, they succeeded in maintaining the fundamental lie that there's nothing there. That's what's important. In terms of, are we a sovereign nation? Yeah, we are. Still, what we are, though, is a nation of a lot of dysfunction. And as more and more people get unhappy with that, they get angry, all right? And they want to hear why things don't go the way they want. And there are plenty of people out there that are happy to tell them, the vast majority of which haven't got a clue, and some have a bit of a clue. And so, and for it to sort of get traction, it has to become focused and then dominant. Call it a conspiracy theory, just call it bad history. But let's just say that people are unhappy with the United States government, and they're going to pick on this, that, or whatever, and come up with various explanations, and then absolutely be convinced that that is it. And history will show, no, it wasn't. We don't know. All we know is there are people that have managed this issue, multiple programs that have conducted this work. Not only the truth embargo, which is a job in and of itself, just maintaining the truth embargo required an enormous amount of effort and time and money. And then you've got the complete engineering programs and scientific studies. That's another thing. All right. And then you've got probably a lot of attention devoted to gaming, where things might go, how would disclosure work, not work, and all that. So, and then you classify it all in a very complex classification schema that includes a lot of NDAs, that include a lot of potential threats on people and what have you. And you knit that all together and you think it's going to hold indefinitely. Well, it's not. It's falling apart. And so I'm inviting people to try not to overreact to the thing that's unfolding, not come to immediate conclusions too quickly. Let's just get the embargo over with, end the truth embargo, and then get worked up about what we learn about how it was maintained. But the nature of the truth embargo itself is we really don't know that much. Oh, we get the odd document, and we get this, and we hear that, and what have you, and you can point to this and that, some of which may be true, some of it may not be true. But this was a massive 80-year program of unbelievable implications and scope. And so I'm trying to hold judgment here. Let's get the embargo ended and then learn the details afterwards. Now, the question that you're bringing up is this. Is this all-powerful management of this issue still pretty much carrying the day? Are they calling the shots? And are they invincible? No. And if they're calling the shots, they're doing a terrible job of it. They're losing on many fronts. It's closing in on them from many directions. And now you have, and by the way, let me point out something else you said. let me be clear. Every single president since Truman included, could have ended the truth embargo anytime they wanted to. Early days, absolutely. Truman could have done it. There would have been zero resistance. Eisenhower could have done it. Zero resistance. Okay. I'm not saying that they didn't try to persuade him not to. I'm assuming they did, but that was Eisenhower. Okay. Kennedy was a different thing. Kennedy was a very significant change of a state of the presidency. Very dynamic man. He got into trouble with the CIA and elsewhere, and it was a very tumultuous time. And you had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and let's just say that could he have done it? If he had moved quickly enough, he might have, but he didn't. We'll never know. He was only there for 3 years. But after that, Reagan could have done it. Bush, I think, actually thought about it. W. Bush might have talked about it because they're the president of the United States, and they can simply walk out and end it in a day. And then if the Defense Department wants to double back and say, no, the president was lying, right? And remember, he's the chairman, he's the commander in chief of the Department of Defense, right? Yeah. Or the CIA, all of it. And so he could end it any time. Now, are they afraid of being assassinated? Once they've made that statement, it would be kind of a little difficult to do that. But any one of the other presidents could have even gone another way. They could have basically called in the key people that they'd appointed to the CIA and the Department of Defense, as well as the heads of the armed services in the Oval Office, and said, look, I've been tipped. I've been given information about this, and people need to know this, and I want to do it. But first, I want you to provide me a lot of information, right? I want to be educated on this. I want to educate the Gang of Eight. And they could have said, Mr. President, you don't have to know this, and the people don't need to know this. And the president would have said, I don't get that information by Tuesday next week. All of you are fired, all of you, and I will replace you with others. It'll create quite a stir, and people want to know why. They'll find out. And if they don't do it, I'll replace them. Any one of them could have done it. They chose not to.
Eisenhower, actually, there was a whistleblower that came out. It was like a deathbed interview. I think Richard Dolan conducted the interview with a CIA operative who was involved in actually briefing, I believe it was Eisenhower, on the UFO ET issue and what was going on at Groom Lake at the time. And my understanding from Richard Dolan's interview, I remember watching the interview a bunch of years back. I think it was somewhere around like 2012, 2013. Eisenhower effectively said just what you said. He said that to this operative. He said, because he told them to go out to Groom Lake, and when the guy got back, he goes, yeah, sorry, sir, nothing to see there. They told you no, like you have no need to know. You're barred access from that. And Eisenhower effectively said, you go back there and you let them know. I forget what division of the Army. I'll get the Army. And I will have them come over there and disband whatever it is that you have going out there. So you give them that message, and you better get me my tour, and you better get the rundown about what's going on out there, or I'm just going to basically just can the whole operation by force. And so, I mean, you actually had a president who was bold enough to say that back. And I mean, wasn't he a general before he became president?
5-star. Look, I set up that interview. Ron Garner was the contact, and I set it up, and Richard went out there. And in the testimony was the film of it was actually shown at the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure in 2014. Wow. Now, it was deathbed. Was it true or not? Don't know. Did it have a couple of aspects were a little bit problematic? Yes. But so I can only say that Eisenhower clearly could have had access to anything he wanted. He chose not to do that, or even if he got the access, and he might have seen some bodies and so forth, he chose not to take action on it. But I'll say this: when he said this, beware the military undue influence of the military intelligence complex. If there were no ETs here, if there had not been a crash in Roswell, he could have still said that, probably would have, because there was serious concerns about the military intelligence complex. That if it wasn't properly regulated, and there wasn't proper oversight, which the Congress is supposed to have, it could lead to unwise things happening. I think the ET presence, though, just took it to another level. It was just another level. Because now we're talking ET tech. Where's that going to be developed? In the military-industrial complex, which is exactly where it was. God knows where that's going. So I'm not going to blame Eisenhower for what he did or didn't do. But every president could have done it. They've chosen not to. 13 chose not to. Now we have the 14th. And he has the benefit of 80 years of activism, well, most of it's in the last 20, but all the research of 80 years of tens of thousands of people, which is amassed, and most of it is legit, okay, and it'll all be reviewed. He has 20 years of activism, all the effort, the documentaries, that's all there now, more so than any other president, because this issue really hits the end game in 17 when the New York Times goes ahead and writes the articles, which confirms the stories that were brought to him by Kane and Blumenthal.
Yes.
And of course, Reed and Bigelow and all of that comes out, right? And then not long after, the To the Stars Academy comes forward with 10 people deliberately involved in that because they're going to try to move this thing forward. So most of it's happened in the last 8 years. And that starts with Trump, all right? And so he has the benefit of the most progress made in ending the truth embargo in the last 7 years than the previous 70. Now, he doesn't win the second election. And all I can say is whoever was advising President Biden in that term had the benefit of 4 years of that development, right? 4 years. A lot happened. And they could have looked at that and said, this is really going somewhere. Let's address this. And they could have done what was necessary, and Biden could have been the disclosure president. Unless they shut it all out. They didn't want anything to do with it. They just locked themselves into, I don't know what the hell they were thinking, and basically gutted the Democrats' party ability to win the next election. So they made so many mistakes. One of them was not taking advantage of 4 years of work since the New York Times articles and really engage President Biden in something that was totally nonpartisan that would have changed history. They didn't do it. So now Trump comes back again. And so for those that might be disturbed, if he ends up being the president that gets the brass ring, gets the last chair when the music stops, I'm sorry. 13 other presidents, half of which were Democrat, didn't do it. And so he's in a position to do it. He has the mindset to do it. It is something that would appeal to him in terms of the rewards and the accolades and so forth that will come from that major event. And it was stated in that movie, I believe, it's been stated a number of times. I forget who said it. I got to watch the movie about 2 more times so I can burn it into my brain.
Yeah.
That the president, the head of state that finally ends this nefarious truth embargo will achieve perhaps the most profound, or have conducted the most profound action of any head of state in all of history, including Alexander and Caesar and all the other ones that were so busy in the 20th century. All of them.
Yeah, that's a major issue.
Think about Donald Trump, and think about the fact that possibility is sitting on his Oval desk right now. He may not see it, but it's there, and all he has to do is pick it up and take it. And so when I say we're close, I mean we are close. Yeah. And so I am operating under the assumption that we could get a surprise announcement at any time. Yeah. The president is going to be addressing the American people from the Oval Office, and he ends it. The UAP Disclosure Act will be resubmitted very quickly, and in a highly nonpartisan way. These members of Congress who desperately need to regain the trust of the American people that have seen them beating each other's brains out for like God knows how many years and are disgusted at a fundamental level, and you have to spend billions of dollars to get them to come out to vote. Yeah, will rise up and sing their praises, sing his praises, and sing the praises of a Congress that passes the UAP Disclosure Act, hopefully unanimously. Imagine that scenario compared to where we are now. What we're dealing with now, what we see on the news now, what is turning up on social media now. Compare those two and say, oh, gee, I don't want that. Right. Oh, God, don't do that.
It's almost like you need a world that has a lot going on. You need to have the question chaotic for an answer to be something that's out of the norm, because normally an answer like disclosure would be like, okay, so what, if you look at the rest of the world, what's going on, all of the turmoil and all of the insanity going on, it's almost like we need something to kind of counterbalance all that insanity to kind of draw us back together. And certainly disclosure would be one of the most powerful things you possibly could do for all of if you look at the whole world, for humanity, not only this country. Have you heard? You've contacted. I remember there was a while back you were doing a campaign. You were contacting the White House multiple times. I remember you were saying, I forget how many dozens of times.
Not the White House, no, Congress.
Congress.
Yeah, I did a lot of work trying to get the nuclear witnesses like Bob Salas, who was in the film, and Robert Jacobs, who was in the film Age of Disclosure.
Yeah.
Which has enhanced dramatically the potential for them to testify under oath finally, after 30 years of trying, and that's still in play.
Okay.
But getting back to something else you said, look, no, we did not have to be in this enormous amount of chaos in order to have disclosure. No. We did not have that. The fact that we have the chaos, but actually, it's not just the chaos, it's the hyper-partisanship. So if we get disclosure, one reason may be because the degree of hyper-partisanship in the country, it achieves such awful levels, like the Troubles in Ireland, Northern Ireland, they call them the Troubles, where you got two parties. You got the Protestants and you got the Catholics. And They had gotten to the point where they hated each other. There was nothing to agree on. And they would blow each other up without hesitation. All right. And this was awful. And it was very difficult to get out from under. They finally did. Okay. This is kind of like that without the bombings. The point is that it's awful. It's painful. It's disgusting. And this issue is a nonpartisan safe space. So in that sense, the hyperpartisanship, how the more ugly it got, made that safe space more attractive. But we didn't need that. We did not need that. The principal barrier to the truth embargo was the nuclear arms race. It's always been that. The nuclear arms race, which we don't talk about enough, in which thousands of very powerful missiles are ready to launch from under the ocean, from mobile platforms in the woods, as well as hardened bunkers, and eventually, who knows, they'll probably put some in space at any time.
Didn't they just knock the clock back?
What now?
88 seconds to midnight. Isn't the clock closer right now than it was
during the
Cuban Missile Crisis?
I think it's 88 or 90, something like that. It's the closest it's ever been in 80 years, and that clock was put out in 1947.
Yeah.
So. And it's easy to dismiss. It's like, so they think it's closer. What do they know? They're saying that for a reason. We are that close, either by intention or by accident. Keep in mind that in 1962, we came extremely close. There were two ways that could have become a nuclear war, which has been forgotten by the general public. I get it. It was a long time ago, 55 years. So there was a submarine commander that was in a position that he could have basically blown up one of the ships. And then Curtis LeMay wanted to invade Cuba and bomb Cuba before they got any nukes established, any missiles established, except later we found that they already had some established. And so if he had done that, there would have been some nukes launched from Cuba into Florida, which would have been very bad for Disneyland.
Yeah, wasn't he even proposing to fly like blow up a jet over there and say it was filled with American citizens, like a false flag operation?
I don't know about that. I know that he wanted to invade. He wanted to take them out before they got the missiles that were on their way in the ocean, except they already had some. So we came that close. Now, interestingly enough, a book that was written in 1962, which might have been written late in the year, might have even factored in before it was published, the Cuban Missile Crisis, was a book called Failsafe, the most disturbing, powerful book ever written about the nuclear threat, in my view. And it was published in 62. 4 years, just a few years later, in 64, the movie Failsafe comes out. Okay, very powerful. And what had happened? had we started dismantling the nukes, were we safer? Not really. We just had a scare. And then 2 years after that book, 4 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis, is when the ETs started shutting down our nuclear missiles in Minot, and 6 months later, 2 times at Maelstrom. That's 30 missiles turned off, starting just 2 years after the Cuban Missile. You think that's an accident? I don't. And they also started turning off the missiles, turning them off, shutting them down in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is all one needs to know, that the nuclear arms race, the engagement of the nuclear arms race and the nuclear weapons issue by the ETs, in some ways we might not even know about, was always certainly the key reason why there was fundamental opposition to and telling the people the truth of this. And it might have varied in seriousness over the years, but I'm sure it was very intense back in the 50s.
For sure.
And I think after the nuclear shutdown, got even more intense. And so since 1966, the United States military, the government, and the intelligence agencies have well known that the ETs have a very significant interest in whether or not we use those nukes. And some of it interpreted as a message, and some of it interpreted as a threat. Now, the ones that are interpreting this as a threat, meaning they've turned off our nukes, they could take us in any time, we have to defend ourselves, and we can't have the public looking over our shoulder, and therefore that truth embargo must stand forever. And those that say, no, it was a message, that's a whole different thing, isn't it? They're saying the message is you got to get rid of these nukes. And so from 62 on, 66 on, which is what? That's 40, that's 40, what 66, 34. It's 59 years.
59
right?
years, yeah.
Yeah, 59 years. That has been the mindset. Because I assure you, everybody that had a need to know about the shutdown of those nukes knew it. And they put all of the security guys that actually saw the craft up top under major NDAs, threat of death, and then repositioned them to 4 corners of the world, including Vietnam. The SAC base officers was a more difficult thing, but they certainly put the pressure on them. Ultimately, Bob Salas made the decision to come forward in 94. And after that, you've got the Hastings book, and before you know it, you've got a bunch of potential witnesses that the government by then had decided we're not going to kill them. And so that is the fundamental reason that we haven't gotten this. And so my message to the public is this, and it hasn't changed. Look, you may feel that the presence of the ETs is something that the world needs to be kept private because classified because there's this threat of nuclear war. I would suggest to you that if we don't disclose, if we don't get this truth out and then engage it as a global civilization, we definitely will have that nuclear war. And then if the truth were known about the ET presence, we would realize that they don't want us to have a nuclear war, which raises the possibility of open contact after disclosure, where we would have a third party involved in that discussion, not just the Soviet Union, Russia and the United States, or Russia and China, or China and the United States, but either one of them and an ET open presence. And so right now, to me, the argument is simple. The connection between the nuclear arms race, which threatens to pretty much ruin everybody's lives at any moment, and the ETs is such that it totally supports ending the embargo, not supporting it. And that is a simple statement that the average person can get, but the average person has no idea of the complexities of the truth embargo. The average person does not have knows much about the whole history of this phenomena that supports that statement. The government's not going to educate them. The colleges are not going to educate them. And so the activists like myself have got to do that. And the historians like Richard Dolan have got to do that. And these new organizations that are forming, like the UAP Foundation. And God, there's several others that have emerged recently that are important and significant. They're going to have to educate the people as best they can. But you know who's doing the most in terms of educating the people about the complexities of this? to get them to a point of at least a fundamental understanding? Podcasts.
Oh, wow. I was going to say private research.
Podcasts are doing it. Not NBC, not CBS, right? Some documentaries on the platforms, but podcasts are the ones that are really getting this to the people in a way that they can get an accumulative knowledge. It's also true about a lot of other areas. But so podcasts, in a sense, coupled with the age of disclosure, may be enough to open the door. Because the age of disclosure, guess what, is triggering a whole bunch of podcasts. Podcasts are going to be the thing that's going to expose that movie more than anything, starting with Rogan, right? Yeah. Now, if Dan Farrar can get on Rogan, he can get on any podcast in the world, technically. And so there's no limit to how many. So he could get on. Has he been on Jesse Michaels' Alchemy? Probably has. I'm not sure, but all of the major podcasts that people really have trust in are open to Dan Farrar at this point, and he just do as many as he can because, one, it helps society and makes him and the people behind that film money. So it's a win-win-win. That's where we are. So again, when I say that disclosure could happen any time, this is not my over-optimism, which I have projected for decades, because you can't get people to support an activist movement by repeatedly telling them it could happen, but the odds are 10,000 to 1, but stick with it, fella. No, you've got to project whenever there seems to be some positive developments. You got to project that, and you've got to talk about disclosure in a positive way. Because when I speak on a podcast, I'm not just speaking to your audience. I'm speaking to the White House, right? I'm speaking to the DOD. All this stuff is on the net. It's anywhere. Right now, anybody can go online, even if you're in the deepest part of the Pentagon, and watch 150 podcast videos and other videos about this subject. It's not against the law. And so when we speak, and all my colleagues speak on these podcasts, they're really not just speaking to the general public. They're speaking to the media. They're saying, let's do some more coverage of this. And they're speaking to the White House. And they're speaking to all of those working inside our defense establishments and security and so forth, whose job is it to protect us, who deserve respect, and it's giving them information to help them make a decision. And 10 of those people, including Elizondo and Mellon and Nolan and Jim Semivan and the other 5, they got that message somehow, and they made the decision to come out at considerable risk to themselves and their future economics and so forth with the To the Stars Academy in 2017 that led to the articles in the New York Times. Now, most of them have stepped back. It was kind of like they did their job in a way. We provided our bios and our photos to the emergence of this organization so people could say, this is serious stuff here, but we're going to step back. And then the 3 that went forward the most, as far as I know, are Elizondo, Mellon, and Lordy, Steve, Nolan, Gary Nolan. Gotcha. These are the ones that went forward, I think, kind of the points of the spear, with Elizondo the point of the spear to the public, and Mellon the point of the spear to the Congress. And over the next number of years, they've helped get us to where we are, and where we are is pretty much there. It's up to the president now. He has Republicans and Democrats in the Senate that support it. He's got Republicans and Democrats in the House that support it. They're all getting praise. They're getting great emails. They're getting a ton of media. Okay. They're not being hammered, at least on that issue. And even though these people, in many cases, are virtually despised by the members of the other party who wouldn't even sit down for dinner with them, but on this issue, no problemo. That's the situation. So if I'm the president, and I really would like to get that Nobel Peace Prize, I would come out next week and disclose.
Certainly, the feather in the cap would be one more incentive for him to go ahead and do that. I know that's why I started this podcast. Was originally I called it Not Media because I kind of got sick of the matter in which mainstream media was handling specifically this topic. I've dealt with other topics before, but I just kind of got tired of it, and there's just a certain level of wordplay and pandering to certain audiences. I just kind of got tired of it. When you're watching a video and you're just kind of like, man, like why is this guy even saying that? Like, it's almost like he's either like got his head in the sand, or he's getting paid off, or like something. I kind of just got sick of it. So I know that's how a lot of podcasters feel, why they even took to the platform, so they
Sure.
could kind of
But guess
get
what?
it.
You help bring the mainstream media along. Mainstream media is on board now. They're on board.
Yeah.
If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, you go to the projects, go to ongoing projects, print media archive, punch on through until you get to the archive. There have been 7,000 articles in professional media since 2017 that I've logged in there. You go read all 7,000 of them.
Yeah.
There's maybe less than a 1%, maybe a half of a percent, actually would call ridicule, demeaning. Okay, they've come on. They're on board. They're covering it tremendously. Could they do more? Yeah, they could do more. But you helped bring them around, because they I think some of those editors and publishers are looking at the responses that the podcasters are getting and going, why can't we get that kind of response?
Yeah. People.
We put some stupid debunking article out, and we get a bunch of hate mail, right? So you help bring them along, and so they're on the side of disclosure now. Basically, the podcast army's on the side of disclosure. Basically, okay. The House and the Senate has got important members on the side of disclosure. All right. We've got current members of the administration on the side of disclosure, including members of the family on the side of disclosure, apparently. And so, exactly, what is the reason why President Trump can't be the disclosure president at this point? What's the downside for him? I can't find it. All right. And so let it be.
Yeah.
Let it be. Every president, no matter who they are, does things we don't like, but they all do something during their administrations that we like, that are good.
Yeah.
Everyone. There's no exceptions. And that's important. Okay. Nobody expects a president to come in and be just what you wanted, and everything is fantastic, and this is really great. And no, nobody expects that. They expect a lot of stuff they're going to hate, right? Even in their own, it's the same party. There's a lot of that. And so, okay. So if any president decides to do something that has a profound positive effect on civilization and the road forward, right? Yeah, do it. You will be honored for it, right? And we're going to take that away. And so I'm going to continue to give these. I've done like 30 some interviews in just the last 6 weeks. That's why I'm hoarse.
A whole lot of benefits for
putting that message out over
to keep
and over
pushing
and over.
forward for this.
Yeah.
So, barring some sort of disclosure from the president within the next days, you have a very busy schedule. One of the things I know that you have going on is the State of the World Forum. It's a netcast that you're going to be holding from December 14th to 17th.
Not me, but I am a co-sponsor.
Okay, so you're a sponsor. This isn't something that you've organized.
Not my event, but it's a big event, and it's only a few days away, December 14th to 17th. Stateoftheworld.forum is that website for State of the World Forum. And this is a 3-day, 51 plus panelists online. It was going to be at a hotel in DC, but the circumstances that we're going on right now just simply made it not possible to do it. So they were going to do it online. And it is the reincarnation of the State of the World forums that were held in the 90s, from 95 to 2000, by the same person that is chairing this, or president of this, Jim Garrison, who was very close with Gorbachev after the fall of the Soviet Union. And so he partnered up with Gorbachev. They created the Gorbachev Foundation, which helped sponsor the State of the World Forum, that Jim was also president. And they held these forums that Gorbachev attended, and other major people attended at those 6 events, extremely high level. And the reason they were doing it was that for many people, the end of the Soviet Union, the outlaw of the Communist Party, the breakup of the Soviet Republic into the Russian Republic and 14 other sovereign states seemed to open the door for a total sea change in terms of the nuclear arms race, the proxy wars and things like that, that maybe this was a chance to really change the world and get it going where it needs to go. And so the State of the World Forum was about very heavy-duty people coming in and talking about the state of the world and where it could go next. and it was well received. I think at one of them they were charging $5,000 a ticket. Okay,
Wow.
so that was then. Now, what happened as we approach 2000 and the State of the World forums are coming to is that those who felt the need to do it decided to crank up the arms race again. Those that felt the need to do it decided, let's have some more proxy wars. Let's go back where we were. Let's take everything backwards, and literally recreated the situation prior to the fall of the Soviet Union. And of course, now, as a result, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have been killed in this, quote, new era. And the nuclear arms race is more dangerous than ever.
Yeah.
But there's another major change on our doorstep, and that change is the confirmation of the ET presence and possibly open contact. There's already private individual contact, which is generally not on the plate, but it will be in this forum.
Yeah.
Where ETs deal with us one-on-one, okay? But open contact, no.
I know Dan Farah purposely decided out of the 4 hours of his film to tactfully leave that out, because maybe that was a bridge too far for the folks that aren't already on board. Somebody like myself might be willing to listen to that and understand it, but somebody that's not even on where are we at with disclosure, where are we at the truth of this matter, maybe giving too much about personal experience might have been a little bit too much for some people to handle. Like,
no, it's mostly cosmetic now. So many people know about the contact. Everybody, it's like there's movies about it, there's documentaries about it, the books and everything else. But it's appropriate. It just makes it a little easier.
Yeah,
contactees have to wait a little longer, but I know that they'll be appreciative. And so,
have you read? I know one of the witnesses on Age of Disclosure. I read a fascinating book by him. I was actually trying to get him on the podcast. Terry Lovelace was I believe he was in the Air Force, and he was one of the witnesses on Age of Disclosure. He was one of the witnesses interviewed when talking about a UAP that was seen, a black dark UAP that was seen above a tarmac. I don't know if it was some sort of a base. But anyhow, he wrote a book called Incident at Devil's Den, and it's actually a fascinating book that was sparked by an event that happened to him in the 1970s when he was either an EMT, and he was also working in the Air Force, or he was enlisted in the Air Force, and he actually had an implant later on in life that was discovered through some knee pain he was having when he was running, and they found out that he had this odd device implanted inside of his leg, and he had some wires that ran up to a chip that was in his leg, and then the wires also ran up towards the upper part of his body. So he started looking into this matter. It's a really fascinating story about a personal experience that he had, and he had, at the time, he had physical evidence in his body and the x-rays to back it up about an encounter that he actually had.
So here's the point to make on that. Since 1947, 10, 15, 20,000 books have been written about this subject. Thousands and thousands of accounts of stories have been published. Hundreds of thousands of people have sent privately, because they just wanted somebody to know their accounts of direct contact to some of the researchers that were noted in this field. Mac, Bud Hopkins, Whitley Strieber.
I've met Bud before, before he passed.
So hundreds of thousands, okay? So Lovelace, the fact that Lovelace was able to describe that event, which is one of countless thousands of known events that have been discussed or talked about, God knows how many more are never discussed. What's important there is not the story. It's just one of many. Is that he was able to provide that story in a documentary in which the Secretary of State was also involved, as well as 2 other senators, 4 sitting members of Congress, a number of PhDs, and other individuals that worked in classified roles in the government. That's what's important. So Lovelace, in a sense, was standing in for, let's just say, 2,000 accounts of those kinds of events by just military people that were never able to come forward about it.
For sure.
Probably died, since they had it. But he's just standing in for how many? Who knows how many? The total number of sightings that have taken place in the last 80 years in which somebody saw something that clearly was probably not of this earth is probably in the tens of millions.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, those that are holding on to the truth embargo, again, really, guys, come on. Look,
Yeah.
You've lost, now you still have time to give up the truth embargo with some dignity instead of having it pried out of your dead hands,
Yeah.
So I'm on your side. I'm happy to help. If you want advice, I'm happy to help.
For sure.
I'm not lawyer advice, but there's still time to have some dignity. So, if the president discloses soon, what will likely happen? You asked this question earlier, and we'll close with this: is that you will see the UAP Disclosure Act almost immediately brought for a vote. You will immediately start seeing hearings being put together.
Yeah.
It'll take a little time, but God knows how many. I mean, there's a lot of hearing rooms on the Hill and countless people that could testify. And at some point, you may see post-disclosure months following, you may have a situation where there's 8 UAP, ET, what I call ET, non-technological advanced bodies, whatever the hell, going on at the same time, right? Senate and House, 5, 6, 7, 8. The press will have a field day. You'll see that. The media will go absolutely nuts. The podcast world will go absolutely nuts. And there will be a torrent of information coming out through articles in the mainstream media, as well as interviews on podcasts and ad infinitum. I'm prepared to do as many as anybody wants to do. And every level will be covered, right? I don't know if this podcast is way up there in the top tier. We got people that can go up there. I'm happy to work down with the what do you call it? The citizen podcasters, just doing their thing. I'm happy. I never turn down a podcast unless it's really bizarre. But that's going to happen, and you'll see enormous attention placed on what's happening in other countries. Other countries will come forward on this. They will not wait. Those that have something to say, and suddenly you will see. I think not suddenly. In time, maybe 6 months in, you'll start to see a lot of what we'll call diplomatic discussions amongst countries that are taking into account the fact that they all now know. What I'm pretty certain of is that other star systems have life that gets very advanced and learns how to get from star to star.
Yes.
And therefore, they'll be discussing how that affects how they are interacting with each other.
Yeah.
There are a lot of issues that play into that, not the least of which is the nuclear arms race.
Yeah.
Right. And so we'll be watching that and see how it goes. I mean, I hope as many people, and many of my colleagues as possible who've carried all this water for so many decades will have a role, that they will be included a little bit. They'll be able to advise or be part of it. Just because we haven't held a security clearance or rose into a GS 23 or something, that doesn't mean that all the years that we've spent engaging this issue, we don't have something to offer. So hopefully that'll happen. So I expect that to happen, and tens of thousands of other things.
And are you also, just one other question for you, are you willing to entertain that one of the possible outcomes of this matter is that it's disclosed that maybe there's a possibility that there is some sort of presence here in this solar system that has been here, possibly in hidden bases or something to that effect, that could be a possibility about what's been going on here?
Well, yeah, but it's highly unlikely. I mean, it's incredibly unlikely.
Okay.
We have a pretty good idea of what is habitable in this solar system and what isn't. Now, they could have a base on Mars or a base on the moon if they wanted, no problem.
The ocean, for example, like the depths of the ocean. That was one of the topics that was brought up.
I know. And this falls into the heading of, look, let's not jump to ETs right away because I find it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sort of a civilization in the ocean like in Aquaman. I don't think so. But, we haven't explored a great deal of the ocean. But the idea that there's civilizations down there and they're coming and going, obviously. See, what we do know is they travel underwater all the time.
For sure, yeah.
And then yet we haven't figured that out, and we don't is ridiculous. So there is a fundamental, I don't know. There's an ingrained. Well, I know what it is. For most of the truth embargo, the explanation for Roswell and those beings was that they come from another star system.
Yes.
That was it, and that's the way the movies played it, and so forth, and that was fine. Okay, I assure you, not a whole lot of people understood relativity in 1947. All right, the average person, I don't know how, 1 out of 100,000 people in this country, maybe 1 out of about 500,000 people, really had an understanding of relativity. It'd been around for a while, and so. But they come from another star system. Now, the government, okay, didn't want the people to know about that. They made the decision to embargo it. And so right away, they pushed a very simple narrative. Our physics, which was developed in the early 20th century, indicates that it's impossible to get from another star to another star. You just can't do it. Right? Yeah. Relativity makes it essentially impossible. Or let me put it this way: you can do it if you can stay alive on a craft that's going to take 40,000 years to get there, or you could maybe create a probe, that just sends it off. But the idea of beings literally coming here, it can't be done, and they pushed it hard. Pounding it away, and class and the others pound it away. Look, you're an idiot. You don't know physics. You don't understand relativity. It's impossible to get here, over and over and over again for a long time. And so the stigma of believing that there's ETs here was clearly attached to, well, and if they are, they come from another star system. Laugh, 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 laugh. And so the star-to-star explanation was sufficiently demeaned and stigmatized that as we move into the end of the truth embargo, there's still a lot of people that just don't want to go there. No. It's like, look, they're all under the ocean. That shouldn't bother you at all, right? Okay. So that's more reasonable. I sound more logical, don't I? It's crazy. And then the other explanation that they have turned to of late is time travelers.
I've heard that.
And again, same problem. Now here, but again, it's not 70, 80 years ago. And so the time travelers are thinking that's more palatable to most people. Like, that's okay. If they're from another star, that bothers me a lot. But if they're coming from the future, right? Which does. It's like that doesn't bother me. Really? And then ultimately the fourth explanation, which is the funniest of all in my view, is in order to avoid that really uncomfortable star-to-star explanation, which was so demeaned, and everybody was called crazy for decades over it, they're from another dimension.
Oh,
they're all living right beside us in another dimension. And since there's one, there may be many. So there's maybe several hundred advanced civilizations. They're just a dimension away from us, right? Or two. Yeah. And I'm going, most people are going to be much more comfortable with that, right? In other words, they're just right there. And if they want to, they could just kind of reach in and blow your nose for you. That doesn't bother me. And I'm thinking, really, folks, I mean, come on. You're not helping here. Let's default to the star-to-star.
Yeah.
And by the way, and again, this is not acknowledged because there are no ETs, but ETs have frequently told contactees when they are in a situation arises, when asked where they're from, they all say they're from the stars.
Yeah.
The ancient situations that we've learned a lot about, which may very well be true. Not everything that's been projected is likely, but there's, I think, hell of a good case that extraterrestrials engaged us. Not the same ones, and it was a long time ago, engaged the human race.
The Dogon, I know that's a popular one cited, where they said they knew about a binary star system long before there was the capability of being able to see it with the naked eye, which is all they had available back then.
And the evidence that we get along with that, assuming that one of those particular accounts of engagement of extraterrestrials with humans in an ancient time, they said they were from the stars.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I'm saying let's just start with that. And then we can look at these other things.
Figure it out after. We just need to all come to a conclusion.
Yeah, and if
one of those is correct.
Yeah, if they can't come from if they aren't from the stars, which might be possible to confirm, then the other three become a little more interesting. But if they are from the stars, those other threes are going in the friggin' trash can pretty quickly. Now,
Gotcha. Yeah.
and one of the reasons that this is happening is that, again, not a lot of people know much about physics. I don't blame them. Not a lot of people these days know much about anything. Education system in America is not crack. Other countries, not so much. In any event, they don't understand that science. And so the ETs do lots of things. They have little tricks that they do. The way they travel, all right? The fact that they can move through objects, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's easy to conclude that there's an extra dimension involved, that they're using one of these other dimensions to create that effect, as opposed to, no, that is just what it looks like based on the technology they're using, which we don't understand.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the interdimensional stuff is a misinterpretation of how they operate and some of the cool things they can do.
For sure.
So post-disclosure and open contact, this would be resolved very quickly. And that would be nice. But until then, the U.S. government and the truth embargo managers would be happy for us to debate time traveling, multidimensionality, and giant civilizations under the ocean for the next 50 years.
Keeps everybody busy. Keeps
us out of their hair.
Getting out.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. We also have to come to a conclusion of what the most plausible explanation right now, with all the given facts given right now. Do you, other than the State of the World Forum, which will be a netcast from December 14th to 17th, do you have any other plugs or anything?
A little bit. But let me mention, I didn't quite finish there. So check it out. If you want to be able to watch it all, and live, and also get the full record and so forth, and you decide to do that, I am a co-sponsor. And so for as a benefit to your listeners, I have a code called PRG95, PRG95 for Paradigm Research Group. If you were to use that code in the registration process, it would save quite a bit of money.
Okay.
So I want to mention that. Okay. And then I think they have information up on the site about the legacy going back to the 1990s. This is a big deal. And they're going to do 5 more of them, and the other 5 are going to be in different countries around the world. And, of course, they will probably be live streamed as well at the same time. So that's coming up. I'm going to be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo. Check out the website. It's been around for 20 years. There'll be 15,000 people there. That's in February 20 to 23. I'll be there for that.
Where's that being held?
In the LAX Hilton.
Oh,
where it's the same place it's always been. I'll be speaking at Contacting the Desert next year, which I think is already got the initial site up. I don't know if they got a date, but the Contacting the Desert's website is up. So I'll be at that one. I'm going to be speaking at the Ozark in April. At a long-running conference, a very nice conference. Everybody loves it. It's kind of cool. The Ozark Mountains UFO conference. So check that out. All right. And I get stuff out on this on my email list, which you can subscribe to at paradigmresearchgroup.org. Feel free to do that. Also, follow me on X. At Steve Bassett, or research, or just a group search Paradigm Research Group. I'm also I have a channel, Paradigm Research Group, on YouTube.
Excellent.
I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook. All followers are welcome. So have I covered pretty much everything? And the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. We certainly welcome donations to that. It's a nonprofit. I'm a nonprofit now, PRG. It's really doing great work. Projects have been created because of this free networking entity. Essentially, we have about 125 film industry people and 125 UAP people, researchers, activists, contactees, the whole 9 yards. And the whole purpose of the HDA is to help them find each other, get together, and make stuff.
Okay.
Make content. We don't get a piece of the action. We're totally out of that. We're just helping the network. But a generous donation would allow the HDA to do some other things, hold events, award ceremonies, things like that.
Sure.
And so we hope that eventually is going to happen. We have a few famous people. Shirley MacLaine is one of our founding members. And I believe that Willie Nelson is about to become a founding member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. So
excellent. We're
coming of age. It's kind of fun. I'll be going out to LA on the 8th. I'll be out there for about 10 days if anybody's in LA dealing with the HDA.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of it. There's so many other things happening to be promoted, but I'm looking forward to doing as much as I can from PRG, which is still, a small entity. It's a
Yeah.
small nonprofit. But if I get a major donation, one of the first things I'm going to do is the Seventh X Conference at the National
Oh,
Press Club. Hasn't been
very,
like that
very
since
nice.
2010. Make it a special deal with an awards banquet, give out lots of awards to people that deserve it.
When was your
And
first? Was your first 2007?
2004.
Oh, I attended one in 2007 or 2008. I think George Norrie was at the one I attended. I
Yeah.
think it was 2007
Four,
or
five,
2008.
seven, eight, nine. I've got a website. I mean, in my website, Paranormal Research Group, there's a section of that. I need to add more stuff to it, but you can get it. It was some of the coolest things I ever did, and it was great. But now I need to do another one. But now it's different. I
Yeah, it's
can't. I bootstrap those sex
a
events.
whole nother world now.
Don't
It's a
ask
whole
me how
nother
I did
world.
it. Now I've got to get about 25K donation in, and then I can lock down the press club and
You have the
immediately
mainstream
start launching.
press now. I mean, you have so much more attention from the world on this topic,
Yeah.
thanks to you largely, and researchers like yourself, just countless researchers who are doing phenomenal work, And you even mentioned some of the people I know, like Stanton Friedman was a huge proponent, and why like Roswell was even on the public
Sure.
radar. And you just have so many great researchers out there, and advocates like yourself doing work. And hats off to everything that you're doing. It sounds like you have yourself super busy, and you're pushing ever closer to the disclosure with the capital D. And I wish you the absolute best of luck. As things progress, I can have you back on, for any sort of
Sure.
updates that you do have in the world of disclosure. And once this truth embargo does end, we can see what the next step is. But from everything that you're talking about, real hopeful that we're going to see a lot more progress in the very near future. And again, everybody, I will plug all the links that you had talked to me on the description of this podcast. And Steve, I certainly appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedule to sit down with me and have this conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening to this episode, and thank you everyone who has chosen a life of service. This is not just military, fire, police, and EMS, but also anyone who has taken their talents and passions and used them for the service and betterment of others and this world. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying until next time. This is your host, @NotMedia, JP signing off. Stay well, everyone.